Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is June 19th. Things are happening in Iraq. They're all good, and we'll be discussing them today. If you like the things we discuss on this call, I hope you'll be kind enough to click the subscribe button and listen to our weekly calls. We try to provide you with the best information available, as well as sharing with you the information regarding establishing family asset protection trusts, something that I think everyone should do, whether they are the holders of dinar or other assets as well. I don't know how long this call is going to go today. The phone keeps ringing, and I'm getting backed up here, but I will do the best I can to get through the information we have and hopefully get to a little bit of a Q&A. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other pre-valued currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves. We're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, our greatest interest is the window for the potential reinstitution of the dinar. I will get into that a little later in the call, and I will simply use the words of the officials in Iraq to answer that question. Iraq is on the move and making a lot of moves, and again, they're all indicators that they're moving to the reinstitution of their currency. They are working with the Kuwait to establish a new fiber optic link. Now, we have to remember that it was Iraq that invaded Kuwait, was expelled from Kuwait, was forced to make reparations to Kuwait, and now the countries are working collaboratively together, so that's good news. We also know that Iraq has instituted a massive program to boost the production, refinement, and distribution of their oil. Now, a lot of individuals have speculated that they're simply not going to be able to reinstitute their currency till their economy, the revenues to their economy is much more diverse. They have made progress there, but the fact of the matter is the world needs what they have in great supply. So the best way for them really to build their economy and transition to a private sector is to simply sell what they have a great amount of, and that's oil. Iraq geographically is also a gateway between the East and the West, and as a result, China must have Iraq as part of their Belt and Road Initiative. So they've instituted a massive trade program with Iraq. So everything is moving in the right direction, and they are developing trade agreements with a number of countries. And, of course, China, even though they're, I wouldn't say a competitor of the United States. Frankly, I'd say they're an adversary of the United States. But the reality is that they do exist. They are in the Far East, and they are making inroads in the in Middle East, and it's unfortunate that our administration continues to be asleep at the switch for a number of reasons, but it is what it is. Now, I want to talk about Basel compliance. We've discussed this in the past and why the value of the Iraqi dinar is going to continue to appreciate. I've also stated that those of us that have purchased the Iraqi dinar did so in a perfect storm. And what do I mean by that? Basel compliance is a 5-phase process that was instituted globally to begin in 1988. The objective is to transition from fiat-based currencies to commodity-backed currencies. In the early 90s, Iraq invaded Kuwait, was expelled from Kuwait, and the country basically completely fell apart. And in order to help rebuild the country, we decided central banks, hedge funds, large whale investors, and even individuals like ourselves purchased the worthless Iraqi dinar in order to help the country, and with the expectation that we'd receive a windfall profit when the currency revalued. So not only did we purchase the currency at a time when it was virtually worthless, we purchased the currency from what I would argue per square mile is one of the richest countries in the world, at the same time that the global community was transitioning to commodity-backed currency. So what's going to happen is when the Iraqi dinar reinstitutes, it's going to reinstitute under a Basel IV compliant rate, which should be substantially higher, in my opinion, than the rate of $3.22 when the currency went into a program rate. That was, over 20 years ago, when the currency represented a nation that was basically a failed nation state under Saddam Hussein. Now, of course, they've tapped into all of their resources, and we've got 20-some years of inflation to add to that 322. So I'll be shocked if the currency doesn't rest. Of course, it's going to fluctuate when it reinstitutes, but I'll be shocked if it doesn't rest north of $4. The Basel IV compliant rate that I've gotten from individuals whose opinion I respect have told me that they're looking at around $4.85 to be a reasonable rate that we can expect the Iraqi dinar to fall at. If that, in fact, happens, the Iraqi dinar would be the strongest currency against the U.S. dollar in the world, although the U.S. dollar is helping because it's really become quite weak of late, and I'll get into that as well. You can go to the Forex Live Futures, which isn't the value of the dinar if you went to the bank to exchange it, but it's a futures rate based on derivatives. I don't want to get into all of that, but it's well north of $4. We also see other central banks, particularly in the Middle East, engaging in currency swaps with Iraq. They're exchanging their currency for the Iraqi dinar. Iraq has been invited to join the BRICS nations, which will probably surpass the U.S. dollar globally if they've not already done so. And we see the demise of the U.S. dollar. Of course, the U.S. dollar transitioned to a fiat currency and a petrodollar in 1971. It's continued to lose value as we continue to print. The Biden administration over the last 3 years has printed somewhere between $7 and $8 trillion, further weakening the U.S. dollar. And now the Saudis have ended their 80-year arrangement with the United States to sell their oil in the U.S. dollar. So the value of the U.S. dollar is weakening. The value of the Iraqi dinar is strengthening. Now that's going to make it even more attractive for us when we go to the bank to do our exchange. However, there is a problem that we're going to need to deal with, and I'll get into that in the course of this call. But let's get back to Iraq, because there have been recent statements by important officials in Iraq lately which once again point to the reinstitution of the dinar. Prime Minister Soudani, I was a little bit shaky about this guy when they brought him in, only because he is a Shia, although he's a moderate Shia. But evidently this guy's the real deal. He's been moving quickly, and frankly, any obstacle in his way, he just kicks to the curb. But he made some statements recently. He said that he has not forgotten about his promises to the Iraqi citizens. He has stated that they expect to add real value to the IQD this year. He didn't say before the end of this year. He said this year, which could mean tomorrow. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but that's the semantics. He also said that the IQD is stronger than the USD. Now, it may not be stronger in terms of purchasing power in country right now, but what he's saying is the groundwork has already been laid. It's just not a matter of public record. He's also stated that the monetary and banking reforms have been completed. Then there's the governor of the CBI Iraq, who released a statement saying that regarding the placement of the first wave of ATM machines, they've literally got thousands of these machines that will be distributed throughout the country, but the first wave has been released. And the Minister of Finance and advisor to Soudani, Saleh, says that the process of loading these ATMs has begun, and that it will include the new category small notes. Now, the mere existence of those notes, let alone loading them in the ATMs, makes absolutely, positively no sense if the Iraqi dinar remains in a program rate. But there are naysayers out there that believe that the Iraqi dinar will not revalue anytime soon, if ever. And I want to touch on their arguments. The first argument is the supply side argument. There's just too many dinar out there. They can't possibly revalue those trillions and trillions of dinar. Well, of course, that's what the project to delete the zeros is for. If a 25,000 note becomes a 25 dinar note, if a 10,000 dinar note becomes a 10 dinar note, then that's a huge reduction in the supply of money. So I don't really think that argument flies. The second argument is that Iraq is operating on a multiple currency system. They've not only removed the U.S. dollar, but there is a great disparity between the official rate and the market rate, the street rate. Well, those rates are closing. But it's precisely because they have not reinstituted their currency that there is a disparity in the rates. Once they come out with an official rate, there will be no multiple currency arrangement. There will be no corrupt officials profiting on the arbitrage between the separate values of the same currency. There will only be one value. And the third argument is that when they delete the 3 zeros, that will affect us. So if we go to the bank with 10 million dinar, the 3 zeros will be deleted, and we, in fact, will have 10,000 dinar. Well, to be completely honest with you, I would have to acknowledge that that is possible. However, I think it totally and completely unlikely for a number of reasons. First, that is not what, even though it was a different situation, that's not what happened with the Kuwaiti dinar. I know that from personal experience. Second, there is no way that all of these agreements that are being made with Iraq, that all of the central banks that are negotiating these currency swaps, that all of the hedge fund managers that are holding the currency, that the BRICS nations are inviting Iraq in, there's no way all of this is happening. If the currencies that they're currently holding, they're going to delete the 3 zeros. I just don't see that as a possibility. So for all of these reasons, if you have 10 million dinar, you will exchange that 10 million dinar for what each dinar is worth. Remember, it's not Iraq that is really absorbing the 3 zeros. It's us. If we go to an American bank with 10 million dinar and we exchange it for the rate of the dinar, we have U.S. dollars operating in the United States. That does not affect Iraq. Those provisional 3-0 notes, our central bank will return to the Iraqi central bank for whatever the negotiated exchange for that will be, and those currencies will be retired. So it's not Iraq that's got a hyperinflation issue or a reduction in the value of their currency because of the 3 zeros. If anyone does, it's us. And now that comes to us because that's the real issue. We've concentrated a lot about the process of negotiating when we go to the bank for our currencies. But for me, let's assume, just hypothetically, I have 10 million dinar. I go to the bank. I get $3 for my dinar. I now have $30 million in the bank. I'll tell you what's bothering me. The bittersweet feeling that on the one hand, I have $30 million in a U.S. bank. The bitter part is a banking system that, in my opinion, may well be on the verge of collapse. So what I have to do is I have to have a plan to get that money out of the banks and working in a portfolio of income-producing tangible assets, and I've discussed what some of those are. We're the ones with the problem. Iraq has eliminated their problem, and it's taken them close to 30 years to do it. But they're on the ascension. Our currency's on the descension. So we're going to have to get our money, and our banking system is best I can say, is frail. As a matter of fact, the federal banks are already starting to go after some of the regional banks, and I like working with regional banks and credit unions. They're local people. They know you. They provide better service. They actually care about their people because they know them. The federal banks, not so much. So our concern is 5 seconds after the exchange, how quickly is that money available to us so that we can get it out of the banking system? And I haven't even touched on the central bank digital currency, although I don't think that thing's going to fly. I was worried for a while that it might happen. We might get one more big push before Biden gets sent to a rocking chair, which is where he belongs. But in the event that the central bank digital currency does come to fruition, we can move to the gold-backed state digital currencies that will be out of the federal credit system, and we won't have to worry about that. But I actually don't think we have too much to worry about the central bank digital currency. So we're in very good shape. I certainly would not want to see a reinstitution before July 1st because that means taxes would be due on July 15th. And since we haven't had time to compel the IRS to tell us what the tax status is, pursuant to IRS Publication 525, it refers to the profit from a currency exchange or a currency option, rather, as cap gain. But this bunch in Washington, I don't think that's going to fly. They're going to call it ordinary income. So if this thing were to happen prior to July 1st, we're probably going to just have to pay the ordinary income tax file for a refund, citing sections of the code, which we can make available on our website shortly. The other issue is it'd be a shame if we had to sell a substantial amount of the currency in order to pay a tax that might not be due when the currency is appreciating. We'd like to be able to hold on to that currency and allow it to appreciate. Of course, so let's say the revaluation happens on July 2nd. Well, taxes, whatever they are, wouldn't be due until September 15th, which would allow us time to compel the IRS to tell us exactly what the tax status is, and it would allow us to hold the currency to allow it to appreciate before we do go to the bank to exchange it. But we're going to see how that hand is dealt and play it accordingly. Now I want to get into a little bit of a history and why the central bank system has really not served the United States well. I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights. But in 2016, newly elected President Donald Trump went to the Oval Office, and he took with him a bust of President Andrew Jackson. And I remember thinking, well, that's a little odd. I mean, Andrew Jackson was a Democrat, and Trump is a Republican, and he certainly was treated very badly by the Democrats through the election process, and it continues to this day. So I decided to brush up on some of the things that I learned in college and try to backtrack and figure out, well, why would a Republican have a bust of a Democrat from 150 years ago, or longer actually, in the Oval Office? So I went back to look at the history of our banking system. Well, the first Bank of America, which was sponsored by the Bank of London, pursuant to the Articles of Confederation, was established in 1781, and it lasted until 1811. But there was something that intervened during that period of time. It was the Revolutionary War. The colonies were successful in securing their independence, but they negotiated with London in 1791 and kept the Bank of London as the sponsor of the first American bank in place. However, when that bank was established, it had a drop-dead date. And in 1811, 20 years after the agreement of 1791, the United States chose not to renew the Bank of London Central Bank. Well, what happened shortly after that? The War of 1812. Now, we're taught in history that the War of 1812 was an attempt by the British to bring the colonies back into the fully control of England. And, of course, that may be the case. But what instigated the War of 1812 was the fact that the United States decided not to renew the central bank. And, of course, London was making a lot of money with that arrangement. In 1816, the United States finally relented and reestablished the Bank of London Central Bank system in order to cover all of its war debt from the Revolutionary War. It's a 20-year contract. It was not renewed in 1936 under President Andrew Jackson. So it was Andrew Jackson, after the establishment of the United States, that ended really the second central bank of the colonies, but the first central bank after the creation of the United States post-revolution. So from 1837 to 1862, the United States operated under something called the free banking system, where there was a series of state-chartered banks. And I'm a boomer. Boomers remember as kids we used to purchase the old Confederate notes. They were on parchment, and they were very fancy, the writing on them, and they had that smell, a special smell. And so we would collect those. But it was a complicated system, and transitioning from state to state was complicated. So in 1863, President Lincoln reestablished a federal banking system and created a people's currency pursuant to Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. Well, shortly thereafter, Lincoln was assassinated. And, of course, we know that the person that assassinated Lincoln was a Southerner with Southern sympathies. But we also know that the Southerners, even though they lost the Civil War, were funded by England, who wanted to break up, once again, the United States over the London central banking system. But we remained with the free banking system until 1913. In 1913, President Woodrow Wilson, who, in my humble opinion, was the worst president in American history, even worse than the current occupant of the White House, was involved in the creation of the 16th Amendment, which created the Federal Reserve, the third central banking system of the United States. It was called the Federal Reserve, but it was not federal. It's a private corporation, and there is no reserve. They simply print helicopter money, and in order to pay the interest on the money produced by the Federal Reserve, they had to create the federal income tax. That's the situation that exists to this day. Now, there was another president who said that his intention, if reelected, was to end the Federal Reserve. His name was John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So there's two presidents who were assassinated, and they did have one thing in common, because one was a Republican and one was a Democrat. But they both wanted to end the central bank system, now referred to as the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve System has been in place since 1913. But as I said, in 2016, we'll circle back to Donald Trump. If reelected, Donald Trump, and he never says it, he never says, I'm going to end the Federal Reserve. and I'm going to end or substantially reduce the federal income tax and transition to tariffs to fund the federal government. He talks all around it. But that's the reason that they hated him the day he came down that escalator. That's the reason they hate him now. That's the reason they're doing everything they can to try to see that he's not reelected. Because if he is reelected, he can't run again for office. So all of the things that he wants to do, he can do knowing that there's no risk of his reelection. I think he'll start with an audit of the Federal Reserve. And that's the last thing in the world that they want. As a matter of fact, there was discussion about an audit of the Federal Reserve just weeks before 9/11. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I am a pattern guy, and there's a clear pattern here of the central bank system going back to when it's created in 1604. I did an entire talk about that, and I touched on some of it here. The reason I bring all of this up is because, as I said, when we go to the banks and do our exchange, we really need to get that money out of the banking system. And so you need to do a number of things. You need to establish your family asset protection trust package to protect your privacy and your anonymity. Also to protect yourself from civil litigation. And you need to get the money at work in tangible assets and out of the banking and financial system. If things were to crash, that's when you move back into the system. But the worst case scenario would be the re-election of Biden. Because then, of course, he's free to do whatever he wants. He's actually, as bad as it's been the last 3.5 years, this is Biden on his best behavior. If he's reelected, God help us. Now, I'd want to touch very briefly on the package, why any individual ought to establish it, particularly denarians. It preserves your privacy and your anonymity. It allows you to avoid IRS scrutiny because the financial operations will occur within a trust. You'll merely receive the dividend as the beneficiary of the trust. It also allows you to give currencies to family and friends and control the post-RV proceeds. You'll create a legacy for your family, and the trust will allow you to avoid both the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax, which can be as much as 65% of your estate. There are also asset protection benefits that it will provide that do not exist if you hold currencies in direct title. Pre-RV, this trust will allow you to avoid something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Tax. Means if you transfer 10 million dinar to the trust pre-RV, currencies that are worth $10,000, and let's say they revalue for $1, now they're worth $10 million in trust, you can only be sued for $10,000 because that's all the currencies were worth when you transferred them out of title to the trust. Post-RV, this trust protects you from future bad acts by segregating assets. Each individual asset you own, your home, cars, boats, etc., each goes into a separate subtrust. So if there's an issue with any asset you own, it's confined to that one subtrust. The other assets are in separate subtrusts, which are separate legal entities or persons under the law. This trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold pre-RV currencies, or holds your currencies pre-RV and financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and is empowered to manage all of the other subtrusts. One gift subtrust if you want to give currencies to family and friends and manage the post-RV proceeds yourself, and 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold homes, cars, boats, etc. This was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've used in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to mass market this trust to denarians, We knew that price tag would be unaffordable, and by mass marketing it, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. There are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front, we'll discount the price to $2,500. That's not possible. We have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum basically offsets our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in monthly installments. We do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in force for all of the reasons that I've touched on today. You contact us to get our initial package, either by phone or email. Once you get your initial package, it has a lot of information about us, about the currencies, about trusts. You can review the package. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. If you wish to proceed with your trust, you can purchase it either by email or phone. Our email address, you can contact us to get our initial package either by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com. Or our phone service that's 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. Review the package. Contact us if you need any assistance. We'll be happy to help you. That's pretty much what we wanted to cover for today. There are some other things I'd kind of like to talk about, but I'm getting so many calls and emails, I just feel it's kind of necessary to get back to these individuals. But I am going to go ahead and open the Q&A for a few questions. Just a second here. Again, while I'm waiting for any potential questions, if you'd like to get our initial package, you can contact us by email or phone. Again, our email address is trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. Okay, our first call is, let's see here. That's area code 805. Go ahead.
Good morning, Jim.
Yes.
Just a quick question. You evidently have a letter that's for the banks that tells them that the trust is a personal trust and not a business trust. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. How can I access that letter? I've had some challenges trying to get certain banks to accept me.
Yeah, well, I can assure you this. When you walk into a bank with our trust in 10 million dinar, the attitude will change. We call it the Jed Clampett effect. But, yes, they need that letter. The problem with the banks is, I'll just be honest with you, they don't know what the hell they're talking about, which is another reason why it's a good idea to get away from the banks as quickly as possible. I will go. What is your first name, sir?
Sid.
Sid. Okay, Sid. I've got your phone number here. Wrote it down. I will contact you after this call and make sure I have the correct email address, and I'll get you that bank letter. Okay?
Okay, great. Another quick question is,
sure.
After this happens and we pay our taxes, let's say we go ahead and pay them by, let's say it happens before the end of the quarter. We go ahead and we pay our taxes on the 15th of this next month, and then we have to pay it again at the end of this next quarter. Is that correct? And then again at the next quarter if we want to hold.
If your currency's in trust, I mean, you pay your 1099 taxes, whether you're an individual or it's a trust, you pay your taxes quarterly, but you'll be paying the second time around, you'll be paying taxes on the dividends and interest that you earned from the net, from the original
let's say I don't want to sell the whole thing. I just want to sell a portion of just enough to pay taxes. I want to hold the rest of it. You
certainly can do that, and as I said, the problem with having to pay the a tax that might not even be due is that you've lost the ability to allow the currency that you exchange to appreciate. But I understand what you're saying. You can allow it to appreciate. You've already paid a tax on the whole gain. So you technically might not even have a tax to pay, and other than the gain between the end of this quarter and what the currencies that you still hold are worth, for the next pay quarter. So it might be a good idea to just exchange it all after you paid your taxes before the taxes for the next quarter are due, because I don't know, the IRS are not friendly folks, and they're not going to be happy, But definitely pay your taxes, because remember, the penalty on an unpaid tax is 100%.
Yes.
Plus interest. Okay?
Yeah. All right. That sounds good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your assistance. Take care.
Okay, Sid. Take care. Bye-bye now. Our next call is area code 954. That's 954. Go ahead.
Jim, how are you? Hector here.
Yes, sir.
Well, I have one question, but the previous question led me to another question because that wasn't too clear. So start with the first one. On the Basel compliance process, you mentioned it's a 5-phase process, and I think I remember in all the calls that we have gotten to phase 4. That means that not everything is ready. We still have one more phase to go.
Well, no. What the phases mean is that the central bank's currency will need to be backed on a higher percentage of their actual tangible assets, gold and other commodities. So it's a process, and we're at stage 4 of the process. So I can't tell you what a quote-unquote Basel V compliant rate of the dinar would be. But people, again, that I respect tell me that their calculation is the Basel IV compliant rate of the dinar, the Iraqi dinar, should be about 485. But what we will do when we go to the bank, we will exchange it for whatever the rate will be at that time. If we were in, suppose the Iraqi dinar had revalued 5 years ago, well, we'd be at Basel III, so it would, that value would be different and the rate might be different. But, this is where we are now. We're at Basel IV right now.
Okay, perfect. And then, like I said, the other question wasn't very clear in paying the taxes. Let's say you have 10 million dinars, like the previous gentleman said. You only exchange 5. Obviously, we know you're going to pay taxes on the whole thing at some point. You're mentioning that it's good to pay them all up front.
No, that's a misunderstanding. Section 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code says if the profit that you would realize on the increased value of a currency exceeds $200, you must pay the tax. If you have 10 million dinar, the tax on the entire 10 million is due. So what the previous caller was saying was, if he feels like the currency is going to continue to appreciate, he's only going to exchange the amount necessary to pay a tax on the entire gain and allow what's left to appreciate. But you owe taxes on the entire thing. The taxable event is not the point of exchange. The taxable event is the increase in value of the currency pursuant to Section 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code.
Okay, understood. But let's say you pay all the taxes on the 10 million up front, okay, and you still have roughly more than half of the dinars left because taxes for worst case will be 39 or 44%, like you mentioned before, with all the luxury or millionaires tax. Let's say you got about a little over half left, where that money has already been paid its taxes from before, because we're paying the whole thing.
That's right.
Now, is that half?
You will pay taxes on that half the next quarter if it continues to appreciate.
Okay.
You'll pay taxes.
Then you same way. You have to report it by the 15th of the following quarter, but just the difference, paying on the difference.
Well, for our listeners, let's say you had 10 million dinar and you got $1 for it. So now you have $10 million. You got to pay taxes on the whole 10 million. I'm just using simple numbers. So you sell half of it. You got 5 million left, and you pay the taxes. Let's say that that $5 million left is now worth $5.5 million. So that $500,000 in profit and increase in value, you're now going to pay taxes on that. The currency that remained. Okay, the currency that you did not exchange in order to pay the tax that you still hold. However much you make on that in profit over the next quarter, you will pay taxes on. Okay?
Okay, which is fair. It's like prorating it. That's fine. It's the way it should be because you've already paid taxes on the actual leftover. But if that leftover becomes more valuable, let's say it goes to $2, now you doubled it. Okay. Now you owe taxes again in $5 million.
You owe taxes on the profits you've realized since your initial tax. Correct.
Yeah, like I said, if it doubles, if it goes to a $2 from $1, then you double the money. Now you're back to $10 million value. You pay taxes on $500,000 again, because that's what it increased if it went to $2.
Correct. All right.
Okay, clear enough. And also, I like to get that bank letter, so I have things. I don't want to have anything pending. If you can contact me later on to do the same thing, that'd be great.
You know, I think that bank letter's on our website, but let me write your let me write down your number here. So I want to make sure I have your. Hold on. I don't want to get your email over the phone, so just let me write down your number.
Okay.
Hold on a sec.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. If I don't have your email, and that goes for Sid too, I'll call you to get your email, and I'll get that bank letter out. Okay.
Okay, alrighty.
All right.
954?
I got it.
You got it. You have it on the screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Our next caller, excuse me, is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. It's Les, Chicago. How you doing, buddy?
Where you been, brother? Haven't heard from you in a while.
I've been all over the place, man. I've been all over. But I've been listening, just hadn't had any questions. Got tired of waiting until I had some news on Monday. But I got a question now.
All right.
Have you heard anything about the ATMs or the lower denom?
Well, according to Salih, the Minister of Finance, they said that they will be loading the ATMs inclusive of the new category small notes. So that doesn't mean that the notes will. The fact that they'll load something in the ATM does not mean that people can go get them and that they'll utilize it. The point is, in anticipation of those being legal tender, they will be in the ATMs. So that's the latest that I've heard.
Okay. All right. Have you seen any of the notes yet?
I've seen pictures of them. You know, I haven't really looked at them closely. I've been, I got too much going on here. I can't take care of my own business.
I hear you. Well, just know I'm always listening, even if I don't ask a question.
Okay, that's okay, Les. I'm just messing with you.
That's all right. Thanks for taking my call, and say hi to the professor, and have a great day.
You too, Les. Take care. Bye-bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Our next caller is area code 225. That's 225. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim, you know the bank letter that you were just talking about. Hey, wasn't that going to be emailed out to everyone that got the trust?
Well, I do include that as one of the supplemental documents when I send the trust. If you didn't get it, you should have gotten it. But I'm running out of paper to write on. Hold a sec. Just give me a second here.
Okay.
Let me write down your number. Just in case I have trouble finding your email, then I'll call you to make sure I have it, and I'll get the letter to you. Where I put? How did you end up with that last 4 digits in your phone number? That's pretty cool.
You already know who this is, then.
That's cool. I wish I could do that.
You can.
But, yeah, when you get older and your memory's bad, it's an easy way to remember.
Oh, no, man, you're a young man, man. You're a young man.
I don't think so. What do you call young? I'm going to be 72.
Oh man, you ain't hit a lick out of snake.
Yeah, I had some. Yeah, someone called me, told me they were old, and they told me their age. I said, I got a hemorrhoid older than you.
Hey Jim, I got another question. Hey, look,
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Hey, is it okay? Like I already got the EIN to the master trust, but is it okay to go ahead and get? I wanted to get 2 more EIN numbers for 2 different sub-trusts and get those all notarized.
No. The only sub-trusts that need EIN numbers are the master trust and the gift sub-trust, and that's because those 2 trusts have different trustees. Your trustee is for your master trust, but you are the settlor/trustee of the gift sub-trust because that's the only trust within the package that you're not the beneficiary. Those are the only 2. The other standard sub-trusts operate under the EIN number of the master trust.
Oh, okay, so them sub-trusts don't need an EIN.
No, just the master trust and the gift sub-trust.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay? Okay, and so I'll put bank letter on here. That's the third guy that wants that letter. Okay. And I'll try to get that out to you this afternoon, okay?
Okay, and look, Mildred Arroyo, she gonna need her bank letter too.
I'm going to send it to you, and you send it to her. How about that?
Hey, that'll work. That's perfect.
Okay, Don. Take care, brother.
All right, you too, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 301. That's 301. Go ahead.
Jim, that's Wanda again.
Yeah.
I'm hearing about the once you go to the bank and you doing your transferring over to make sure that you have that letter. I believe I have the letter. So once we do that, we want to make sure that we are able to come out of there with our cash.
Well, I'll give you the same example. Let's say I have $10 million in R, and let's say we get $1 for it. I can promise you're not going to go into a bank, exchange it for $10 million, and have access to $10 million. But they very well might say within a day or two you've got access to $100,000. You have access to 10%, whatever that is, and there are banking regulations about liquidity, so they can't sit there and hold your money. Now, there is one way they can do that. If they give you a deposit slip with a 10 or 20-day hold on it, then legally they can hold that money. So that's one of the things, and we'll be discussing that when the dinar reinstitutes. The part of the negotiation, don't be putting any hold on my money. I want my money available as soon as possible.
Okay.
So
okay.
That's one of the issues. The banks are going to be a pain in the you-know-what. They just are. Okay. The leverage you have is you're the one with the currency. So before that money is in their bank, that's your opportunity to make sure that it's as advantageous to you because it's your money, because you can go across the street to another bank. And you might have to play hardball with these people. You never know. They might be very cordial. They may understand. They may bend over backwards to accommodate you in every way, or they may try to play you, and then you're just going to have to say, my money, my rules.
Exactly. And you are working on trying to give us the information of the banks that we would be able to make the exchanges?
Yeah, well, that's going to, yeah. As a matter of fact, I've already been talking to some of the banks now. I've said in the past that I really didn't have anything to negotiate, but it's pretty clear now that in the direction that Iraq's moving, that banks want to be involved in this. So all I'm trying to do is to get them to understand our clients are coming in with their trust, and we want to know that they're going to get the best street rate available and what's the lowest transaction fee, and that's what I'm trying to work out right now. But once this thing hits, then I can call them back and say, okay, it's happened. They're going to banks. We need something in writing from you that we can put on our website. But to be honest with you, most people are going to run to the bank with their hair on their fire because they've been chomping at the bit to do this for decades, so they just want their money, and they're not going to waste a whole lot of time waiting for Jim to negotiate something. So I will do the best I can, but that's all I can do.
Right, that's the point. I don't want to run like my hair is on fire and then get caught up in something because I'm in that rush.
Right. Well, what I've tried to say to people is, as hard as his money is emotion, and the way people manage their money is an indication of their personal emotions. And real astute investors are able to turn that switch off and just make business decisions devoid from emotion. And the same is here. Remember, even if we only get $1, that's more money than we thought in our wildest dreams we would ever get on an investment like this. So we do the best we can with the light that we have, and we just, as hard as it is, you can't look back and regret, I could have gotten, if I'd have waited 2 more days, or if I'd have gone to this other bank that my uncle went to. It's torture, but you just got to try to look away from that and just look at what you've got and do the best you can with what you've got.
And one more question. So when we do go in with maybe half, how do we go in with the other half to make that
well, it's
change?
The same process. It'll be the same process, but remember, if the revaluation were to occur now, taxes on all of it is due on July 15th. So you're going to need to do a little math and figure out what you want to do. Some people are just going to go in and exchange it all. They're not going to care. Other people are going to play. I'm just going to exchange what I need to pay the ordinary income tax. I can't even wait for the IRS to tell me if it's cap gain, long-term cap gain, and I'm going to let the rest of it ride, knowing I'm going to have to go and renegotiate that exchange and pay taxes on that gain at the next quarter. So everyone's going to have to, do what they think is best, but don't get too cute with it, because if you don't pay a tax that's due, you're looking at 100% penalty plus interest.
Exactly.
And there are people. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Finish. There are people.
I was going to say there are some imbeciles out there that are saying there's no tax on a currency exchange. Well, if the tax is, say, 44%, which is the high marginal tax, plus the 5% millionaire surtax, you listen to some moron, don't pay the taxes. You got to pay 100% plus interest. So that's 90% in taxes plus interest. You could end up actually owing them money. So,
exactly, and having nothing.
Yeah, and that's worse than not having ever had the credit. There's nothing more pathetic than someone that lost it all overnight. Trust me, I've seen it.
Exactly. Now, if what about if you have other currencies?
We'll just wait for them
like
to revalue.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got 5 or 6 other currencies. Well, it's the same process. When they
just waiting
revalue.
for them.
Yeah, when they pop, then you go to the bank and you just go through the same thing all over again.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, Wanda. Take care.
Right. All right.
Our next caller is area code 801. That's 801. Go ahead.
Jim, it's Clay Blackwell. How are you this morning?
Hey, Clay. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, my friend. Listen, you realize that the 23-25 budget is in a stalemate right now, right?
Yes.
It hasn't been approved. I mean, it's been approved, but it hasn't been listed in the Gazette, nor has the president signed it, because it's being challenged by several ministers in Parliament.
Yeah, I think that's going to be resolved quickly. That's why I didn't even touch on it. It's the same suspects all the time. They just try to screw things up. I think the court's going to roll their eyes and say, go away.
Well, what I think the reason behind it is I think they have to create an event in order to revalue or reinstate that currency, because you're aware that they cannot change the value of the currency during an active budget, and that budget is not active right now. So once the court
that
makes
budget,
a decision,
well, but that's the reason they've got to make a decision. That's the point. The court's not going to let this thing linger. Yeah.
Right, but the problem is, if they approve the budget in its current form, it's approved in a program rate. And they can't change the rate once the budget is approved and listed in the Gazette as an active budget. There's no way to do that.
I respectfully disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. They've passed numerous budgets over the last decades, and we've seen the value of the dinar, granted in a program rate, vacillate from anywhere from 900 to 1,600 against the USD. So I don't think that's the case, personally. And that doesn't mean that the legislature can't make some sort of amendment to deal with that.
Well, the problem with it is that they've got all those reforms, and they can't do anything with the reforms at a program rate. You mentioned something about there being a mechanism inside the budget in order to change it. Where did that information come from?
The budget.
You have information.
And you know what? I've written it down, and I'm looking around right now. Hang on one sec. Let me just see if I can find it. If I can't, I can't. Just give me 1 second here.
I'm just wondering what your source was regarding that information, because I've never heard that before.
I walked away from the phone. Hang on a sec. I have some people in Iraq that I talk to, and I also talk to currency. I have some currency speculators, and this is their job. This is all they do, and they kick the tires. They look under the hood. They do all of this stuff, and
no, you're also aware that, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, I just talked to you while you're doing that. You're also aware that they're now spreading the ATMs as we speak throughout the country of Iraq. Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense for them to do that unless they were loading it with denominations.
So I agree. And that's the other thing. Why would you spend the money to literally create the new category small notes, load them into the ATMs, and then they're basically worthless because of this issue that, in my opinion, they can amend it. Now, I'm looking. I mean, budgets are amended all the time, you know.
Well, the problem with that is with the budget amendments, changing those not denominations, but changing those values in the budget seems like quite a complex endeavor.
It is, and I have no doubt that they've run.
It'd be easier to amend the budget. Go ahead.
Since when does Iraq do things the easy way?
That's true.
They've always put their cart before the horse. Okay?
I agree with that. 100%.
But I have no doubt that they have run the numbers any number of ways. They've probably looked at 1-to-1. They've probably looked at a premium over the dollar. They probably looked at 322. They've probably looked at 425, 485. They probably run it every way you can run it.
Well, all you really have to do is take the trillions of dollars in the budget and convert it to billions, and that'll tell you what the value of the dinar is worth right there.
Agreed.
Now, the other thing is as of the 16th of this month, they've created several holidays and weekends included that were never there before. One is this new holiday for the pilgrims that are coming in. This is something they just pulled out of their hat. I personally think that they're using that as a diversion in order to load the denominations in those ATMs. And that after that holiday is done, there's nothing to say that the court won't come back saying, look, listen, this budget is not valid. It needs to go back to the Council of Ministers to amend it, because the parliamentary finance was the one after the Council of Ministers released it to parliamentary finance. They're the ones who added the trillions of dinar in there to accommodate the salaries for the Kurds, and they don't have the right. It says it right there.
I was just going to say
the right to do that.
No, No, they don't. I'll give you an example. Just today I heard a speech. Biden was talking about mass amnesty. He can't do it. He just made a he can't. Well, that's what these guys. They just said something. They can't do it. They're actually, to me, it's a sign of their desperation. They don't want it done for their own reasons. That's
I honestly believe it's a diversion. I think that's what it is. I think it's to throw everybody off.
Well, let me ask you this question. Maybe you haven't thought about it this way. Let me preface it by saying that when the Kuwaiti dinar reinstituted, if it wasn't days, it was just weeks before it reinstituted when the Central Bank of Kuwait said not to expect a reinstitution for a year. And then in a couple of weeks it reinstituted. Now, why would they do that?
Well, the only thing I can think is so there's not a run on the dinar.
They're trying to control the speculators. When something is going to increase dramatically in value, you don't say it's going to happen at this precise moment and this amount. So they kind of want to drop it on you. You know what I mean? And so that's one of the things that's involved. They are concerned about speculators, and they are concerned about some of the dinar that are in the hands of some nefarious people. So they just don't want to put a windfall profit in their pocket if there's anything they can do to make that more difficult. So that's another layer as well.
I disagree with that to this point. Regardless of speculators or whoever's holding that dinar, whether it be currency traders or whatever it is, who has the dinar at the time of the reinstatement is the one who's going to gain the money. Fortunately, if you're in the USA, from what you've told us, we're not going to have to travel. We can make our exchanges right here with the U.S. Treasury. And the fact that because of Basel compliance, it's going to make the U.S. Treasury even richer. So that has no adverse effect on Iraq.
I agree.
So why
that's what I said. I said it's not.
Why would the speculators be such an issue?
Because they're concerned that the money's going to fall into the wrong hands. That's why they brought in the Paris Club to recover as much of it as they could. They're concerned about terrorism. I mean, look, there's a war in the Middle East. You know, they just don't want the wrong people to have this money, and they're doing. I mean, even in country they're doing it. You know, a lot of the politicians are in deep water for ferreting the currency out of the country. So, you know, to me, that's just standard operating procedure.
I think it was Anwar Shabibi that said big rate changes can occur in the middle of the year or the beginning of the year. And we are dead smack in the middle of the year. So
and they are following Shabibi's plan.
Right. I truly feel that after this court decision, we'll know where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. I really, this is just my opinion, I really think that the people that are in the position to make the decision have made the decision, and no matter what else the naysayers throw at them, they're just going to just kick them to the curb and say, we're proceeding, pound sand.
Well, I think we're within at least 30 days of this. I think we're within at least 30 days of this happening. They can't put it off much longer. Or like in the U.S., they're going to be a failed state, just like if they don't lower interest rates. We're going to have a problem here. Same thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't even want to see this thing for a couple of weeks into July anyway, so next 30 days, I'm golden.
Right. All right, well, listen, Jim, I won't keep you, but if you find that information, I would really like to know where the source of that is.
I will track it down. It was a section. I'll try to track it down. Let me write down your phone number, man.
Well, you don't have to do that. You know my phone number. What you could do is on your next presentation, your next commentary, if you find it, you could bring it up at that point.
Let me write this down. Hold on one sec.
Okay. You mentioned there was a trigger. a mechanism in the budget,
There is.
23-25
Yes.
budget, that allows them to change the rate at any time.
I'll make a couple calls and see if I can track that down and get back to you, okay?
I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you very
Sure.
much.
Okay, Clay. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye now. Well, Clay was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I hope it was very informative for our newer callers, and it'll inspire you to contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. You have our contact information. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye now.
Recorded.